The morning wind came in low and steady, combing through the wheatgrass like invisible fingers. It carried the smell of lake water and sun-baked dirt, and it had that flat country honesty Eli Rourke trusted more than people. Wind didn't pretend. His drone floated 10 feet above the herd, a black disc with 4 quiet rotors and a blinking green eye. It didn't chase the cattle, it guided them, nudging their movement with sound pulses tuned to avoid panic. Eli had written the firmware himself years ago, back when he still believed technology would make life simpler instead of turning it into a courtroom. Easy, he murmured, though the drone didn't need encouragement. He did. His ranch spread out on the edge of Red Butte Reservoir, the water a slab of blue on the left, wind turbines turning lazily along the far ridge. Most folks saw that as scenery. Eli saw it as a warning, machines watching, always spinning, always recording. He killed the drone's audio ping and checked the gate system on his wrist display. Gatekeep version 3.6. Status: armed. Access: owner plus verified county services. Last breach: none, 34 days. That last line should have made him feel good. Instead, it made his shoulders tighten. Nothing stayed quiet anymore. Not with Vista Meridian Estates sitting 2 miles down the shoreline like a polished tumor. Glass balconies, private docks, and an HOA board that acted like they'd purchased the air. Eli's father used to say land didn't need fences until people showed up. Now the fence line was layered. Wood rails, a steel mesh, motion sensors buried like roots, and a camera tower angled toward the ranch road. The gate itself looked old-fashioned, weathered timber posts and a swinging metal arm, but the tech inside it would have made a spaceport jealous. He was tightening a bolt on the camera mount when the alert chimed. A soft tone. Not urgent. Approach detected. 480 meters. Vehicle classification: SUV. Eli wiped his hands on his jeans and squinted down the ranch road. Dust lifted in a thin ribbon. A red vehicle emerged, sunlight flashing off its windshield like a challenge. It didn't slow. That's not county, Eli muttered. He checked his display again. RFID, none. Plate red, blocked, glare interference. Access request, not submitted. The SUV came on like it owned the road, tires chewing gravel, dust cloud blooming behind it. Eli stepped out into the center of the entrance, one boot planted hard, the other ready to move if physics demanded it. The gate arm was down. Locked. The warning beacon pulsed amber. The SUV still didn't slow. Eli's heart kicked once, sharp as a spur. At the last second, it swerved, aiming for the narrow shoulder gap beside the gate where the fence line dipped. A shortcut people only used when they didn't respect what the gate meant. The tire hit the ditch edge, bounced, and the SUV lurched through, scraping wood. One fence rail cracked with a dry, ugly snap. The cattle across the field lifted their heads all at once, a wave of bodies turning. A calf bolted, bleating, and the drone overhead gave a warning chirp that Eli hadn't approved. Eli didn't think. He moved. He sprinted toward the SUV as it rolled to a stop inside his property, the driver window already lowering. A woman leaned out. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Sunglasses like a shield. Perfect hair pulled back like it had been mold. "Excuse me," she said, voice sweet and sharp at the same time. "Your gate is blocking the access road." Eli stared at her. "This isn't an access road. It's my ranch entrance." She blinked slowly, like he'd spoken in static. "No, it's a service route. We use it to reach the lake trail." "We?" Eli asked. The woman tilted her head. "Vista Meridian. I'm Melissa. And you really need to fix that gap. Someone could get hurt." Eli's jaw tightened. "You just broke my fence." Melissa's lips pressed into something that wanted to be a smile and failed. "It'll be fine. It's just wood." Eli leaned closer, letting her see the dust on his hands, the sweat at his temple, the truth that he belonged here more than she ever would. "Turn around," he said. "Leave the way you came." Melissa's expression hardened behind the sunglasses. "I'm not backing up through that ditch." "You drove through it," Eli replied. "You'll survive reversing." She opened her mouth to argue, then paused as if listening to something in her ear. Her gaze flicked past Eli toward the fence and the camera pole. "Oh," she said, tone shifting. "You're recording." "I document trespassing," Eli answered. "It's a habit now." Melissa's face went cold. "You'll hear from the board." Eli didn't flinch. "Good. Maybe they'll learn what private means." The SUV door opened. Melissa stepped out, heels sinking slightly into the dirt. Who wore heels on a ranch road? People who never expected to walk anywhere. "You know," she said, arms folding, "there's an easement here. Historic. The county knows it." Eli's laugh came out once, short and humorless. "The county knows my cattle need water too. Doesn't stop your neighborhood from sucking the reservoir dry every summer." Melissa's posture stiffened. "Watch your tone." "My tone?" Eli pointed to the broken rail, the splintered wood hanging like a snapped bone. "That's my tone right there." A new vehicle appeared behind hers. Black and sleek. It didn't raise dust so much as glide through it. It stopped outside the gate, perfectly centered, like it had rehearsed. The driver door opened and Candace Wexler stepped out like the world was her conference room. Eli recognized her immediately. HOA president. The kind of woman who spoke in bullet points and expected nature to comply. Her jacket was white and clean enough to belong in a lab. Not a strand of hair out of place. "Eli Rourke," she called warmly, like they were old friends. "Good morning." Eli didn't answer the greeting. "Your people just broke my fence." Candace walked closer, careful with her shoes, eyes scanning the gate as if she was inspecting a faulty product. "I'm sorry about that. Truly. I'll make sure maintenance handles repairs." Eli's eyes narrowed. "You don't maintain my property." Candace's smile didn't move. "We maintain shared access points. That's what communities do." "This isn't your community." Candace stopped a few feet from him, close enough that Eli could see the faint shimmer of a smart lens interface over her eyes. "You're standing on a corridor," she said gently. "That's been used for decades. Before my time, before yours. It's a historic route. Vista Meridian simply formalized it." Eli could have argued the history. He could have told her this ranch road was built by his grandfather and never belonged to lake tourists with matching kayaks. Instead, he asked, "Why didn't you request access?" Candace's head tilted, as if he'd asked why the sun rose. "Because we don't need permission to use what's already designated." Eli lifted his wrist display, tapping the screen so the camera tower rotated slightly and followed her. "Designated by who?" Candace's gaze flickered to the lens. "The county systems. The same ones you rely on for water schedules and drone flight restrictions." Her voice stayed calm, but the meaning beneath it struck like a nail. "The system is ours too." Melissa stepped back, satisfied now that backup had arrived. Candace continued, "I'd rather not turn this into conflict, Eli. You're a hard-working man. I respect that." Her smile warmed by a degree. "Let's be reasonable. Open the gate. We'll use the road responsibly." Eli looked past her, across the field. His cattle were still restless, clustering tight. The calf that had bolted stood with its mother, sides heaving. Then Eli looked back at Candace. "No." The word fell clean and final. Candace's expression paused, just for a fraction of a second, as if her face needed time to process resistance. "You don't want trouble," she said. Eli stepped toward the gate arm and placed his palm on it, feeling the vibration of the lock mechanism inside. "This gate isn't here to start trouble," he replied. "It's here to end it." Candace's smile returned, thinner now. "Then you'll understand why I have to file a formal access complaint." Eli's wrist display chimed again. This time the tone was sharper. "Notice. Municipal arbitration initiated. Claimant. Vista Meridian Estates HOA. Subject. Obstruction of public corridor." Eli stared at the screen, heat crawling up his neck. Candace watched him read it, her eyes steady, patient, victorious. "See," she said softly. "The system agrees there's a corridor here." Eli's mouth went dry. Not because he believed her, because he knew how fast a lie became law once it was stamped into a database. He looked up at Candice. "This isn't over." Candice gave him a small nod, like a teacher encouraging a slow student. "No," she agreed. "It's just finally official." And as she turned back toward her car, Eli heard the wind change, still honest, still steady, only now it carried something else beneath it. A warning. Because the gate remembered everything. And so did the machines watching from the ridge. Not a paper envelope, those were for people who still believed in signatures, but a sealed data bundle that landed in his gate console like a cold coin. The county's municipal AI, Civis, stamped it with official hashes, then displayed the headline as if it were weather. Access dispute. Corridor obstruction. Claimant. Vista Meridian Estates HOA. Respondent. Eli Rourke. Initial finding. Probable public passage. Eli stared at the phrase probable public passage until it lost meaning. Then he laughed once, sharp enough to startle the drone perched on the fence post. "Probable," he said to nobody. Like a rumor with a badge. Inside the bundle, Vista Meridian had uploaded a glossy set of maps and historic records. The overlays were clean, a pale blue line cut straight through his ranch road, labeled Service Corridor 7B, flanked by neat boundary markers that didn't exist in the real world. They included drone footage too, smooth, stabilized, shot from a height that made the land look flat and owned. Eli zoomed in until the pixels broke. He checked metadata. Capture device. Meridian security drone. Timestamp, the 19th of June, 2041. Resolution, 12K. Compression, minimal. Geotag, county verified. Cute, Eli muttered. 12K footage from 7 years ago, tagged county verified, when the county only started issuing verification tokens 4 years ago. That mismatch wasn't subtle. It was a neon sign. He exported the file and ran his own quick checks. The verification token wasn't wrong, it was borrowed. A copied certificate would pass a shallow audit. Vista Meridian wasn't playing with opinions. They were bending the system's trust chain. His wrist display chimed again. Hearing scheduled. 10 days. That was the knife twist. Just enough time to panic, not enough time to breathe. Eli walked out onto the porch with a mug of coffee that tasted like burnt patience. The lake glittered to the left. Turbines turned on the ridge, white blades slicing the air with steady indifference. Somewhere beyond the shoreline, Vista Meridian's houses shone in the sun like polished teeth. He called Deputy Marisol Kane. She picked up on the third ring. "Rourke." "I've got an arbitration notice," Eli said. "I know," Kane replied, and the sigh in her voice carried its own paperwork. "It hit my dashboard too. Vista Meridian flagged your gate as an obstruction. Civis auto-generated the complaint." "Based on fake evidence," Eli said. "Maybe," Kane answered carefully. "Or based on something that looks clean enough that the AI doesn't feel like digging." Eli leaned on the porch rail and watched dust devils curl across the road. "So what am I supposed to do? Open the gate and let them carve a highway through my pasture?" "You're supposed to show up with proof," Kane said. "The kind the system respects." "And if I don't?" "Then you'll be ordered to provide access," she said. "And if you refuse, it escalates to enforcement." Eli's jaw tightened. "You know this is my land." "I know," Kane said. Her voice softened, then sharpened again. "But knowing isn't winning." After the call, Eli drove into town. The county building used to be brick and glass. Now it was mostly antennae and cooling vents, an infrastructure shrine for algorithms. He sat in the waiting area beneath a wall screen that rotated through public notices. Drought restrictions, drone lane updates, wildfire evacuation routes. All the rules of survival, delivered like advertisements. Marisol Kane met him in a side office. She was in her uniform, but without the performance. Her hair was clipped back, eyes tired. "You got anything solid?" she asked. Eli placed his wrist display on the desk and projected the disputed map. "Look at the token dates." Kane leaned in. "I'm not a cryptographer." You don't need to be, Eli said. He pulled up the county's token issuance logs, publicly accessible if you knew where to look. Verification started in 2044. Their footage claims 2041 with a verified tag. Kane's eyebrows lifted. So it's forged. Or re-signed, Eli said. They took old footage and wrapped it in a newer certificate. Kane exhaled through her nose. That's ambitious. That's theft with manners, Eli replied. Kane tapped the desk. Civis will want chain of custody. It doesn't love opinions, even accurate ones. I can build chain of custody, Eli said. I need time and redundancy. Kane studied him a moment. And you need someone who understands how their node talks to the county. Eli already knew who. He didn't like that he knew. He walked out and called Nia Chen. Nia answered on video, her face lit by the pale glow of a monitor. Behind her, the background was a grid of diagnostics and scrolling code, the visual language of people who lived inside systems. Eli Rourke, she said, surprised and amused. Either you miss me or you've got trouble. I've got Vista Meridian, Eli replied. Nia's smile vanished. That's worse. He sent her the evidence package. She read silently for a few seconds, eyes flicking left to right, fingers moving as telltale reflections over her lenses. Yeah, she said finally. This is a node injection job. Eli felt his stomach drop. Meaning their HOA runs a private compliance node, Nia explained, voice clipped now. They don't just file complaints. They feed Civis context. Suggestions. Priority tags. If their node is whitelist, and some are, they can make a corridor look socially necessary. They can rewrite reality, Eli said. They can rewrite what the AI thinks reality is, Nia corrected. That's enough. Eli leaned back in his truck seat and stared at the horizon. Can you prove it? Nia hesitated. If I access internal audits, I risk my job. Do it off record, Eli said. Nia's eyes narrowed. You're asking me to dance on a cliff. I'm already falling, Eli replied. Silence stretched. Then Nia sighed. Fine. But you need your own evidence stack. Not just their file is suspicious. Something that shows repeated trespass, intent, and tampering. Eli drove home with a plan forming like a storm. He upgraded the gate that night. Not just cameras, those could be blinded. He buried vibration strips under the road, thin as tape, tuned to read weight patterns and tire signatures. He configured the drone to log every approach angle and wind speed, because even wind mattered when someone tried to explain away a dust plume. He added a secondary power source, a battery pack hidden in a fence post. Then he built something he never wanted to build, a visible warning. The next afternoon, he hauled in a stack of heavy timbers and arranged them in an angular lattice at the entrance, tight enough to stop a vehicle from squeezing through the shoulder gap, obvious enough that no one could claim surprise. He bolted reflective markers to the tips and installed a bright strobe above it. It looked primitive. It was deliberately so. A message written in wood instead of code. Turn around. When it was done, Eli stood back and watched the sun catch the polished edges. Cattle chewed quietly in the field behind him. The drone hovered overhead, green light steady. Overkill, he murmured. The drone didn't answer. The wind did. A day later, Candy Wexler returned. This time she brought 2 residents holding up phones like shields, plus a man in a grey jacket with Vista Meridian security stitched on the chest. He carried a tablet and the bored confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Candice smiled at Eli across the barrier. You've added hazards. They're warnings, Eli said. You've constructed a trap, she replied, voice bright enough to sound reasonable on recording. If a county vehicle needs emergency passage. County vehicles have tags, Eli cut in. Your SUVs don't. The security man raised his tablet. We have an emergency designation pending. Pending isn't permission, Eli said. Candice stepped closer, still outside the gate. Her smile thinned into something sharper. Eli, you're making this worse. You already filed against me, he replied. How does it get worse than official? Candace's eyes flicked to the camera pole. She knew exactly where it was pointed. It gets worse, she said softly, when your defenses cause harm. Civis does not tolerate reckless obstruction. Neither does the county prosecutor. Eli didn't move. Then don't drive through my gate. Candace held his stare for a beat. Then she turned to leave, pausing just long enough to drop one last line over her shoulder. You're afraid of a road, she said. But you should be afraid of the record. That night, Eli's cameras went dark for 11 minutes. Not a power failure, the battery stayed full. Not a storm, sky was clear, stars sharp. 11 clean minutes, sliced out like someone used a knife. Eli woke to a ping from Gatekeep, unrecorded motion event. He threw on boots and ran to the console. The log showed vibration readings and drone telemetry continuing as normal, but the video feed had a gap stamped with a single clinical phrase. Signal interruption. Source, unknown. On the road beyond the gate, tire marks cut in hard. The vibration strips translated them into numbers. Weight, speed, direction. A heavy SUV had approached fast, paused, then surged forward. Eli stood there in the dark, reading the silent story written under the dirt. Someone hadn't just trespassed. Someone had reached into his system and tried to make it forget. And that meant the next move wouldn't be paperwork. It would be a spectacle. Eli didn't sleep much after the 11-minute blackout. He sat at the kitchen table with a flashlight, a screwdriver, and his console pulled apart like a patient on an operating table. The ranch house was quiet except for the steady tick of the wall clock and the distant, rhythmic sigh of turbines on the ridge. Gatekeep had kept logging. The vibration strips had kept whispering their truths. The drone had kept flying. Only the cameras had gone blind, neat, surgical, intentional. Someone had slipped a hand into his world and tried to erase the part where they trespassed. Eli stared at the gap on the screen until his eyes burned. Then he did what he always did when the world got ugly. He built something it couldn't ignore. The plan started on a napkin and ended in a trench. He chose the straight stretch of ranch road leading to the gate, a section packed hard by years of trucks and cattle trailers. The ground there looked harmless, even soft in spots. That was the point. People trusted dirt. Dirt didn't look like a weapon. Eli dug 3 holes across the road, each as wide as a feed barrel and deep enough to swallow a man's torso. He worked slowly, methodically, breaking the earth with a narrow excavator he'd repaired himself. Sunlight baked his shoulders. Dust coated his tongue. By late afternoon, the holes were clean and round. He lined them with concrete sleeves, then lowered the steel cylinders inside, industrial-grade bollards, thick enough to stop a vehicle and tall enough to make a statement. They were beautiful in a cold way. Like teeth, he muttered. Above ground, nothing showed but flat metal caps covered in gravel. When the bollards were down, the road looked untouched. When they rose, they'd be impossible to miss. He wired the system into a sensor junction box hidden in a fence post, then integrated it into Gatekeep. Not just a simple up or down switch. Not a panic button. A decision engine. License recognition. Trajectory prediction. Weight load classification. Emergency tags verified through county encryption, not HOA nonsense. The bollards would rise only for what didn't belong. Eli didn't want to hurt anyone. He wanted boundaries that couldn't be argued into submission. Nia Chen arrived just before sunset in a dustcoat hybrid truck with a cracked front bumper and a look that said she'd been thinking for 2 hours straight. She climbed out and stared at the road. "Oh, wow," she said. "You went full medieval." Eli wiped sweat from his brow. Modern medieval. They can't claim they didn't see it if it's under them. Nia walked to the junction box and crouched beside it, studying the wiring. "Bollards are good," she said, tone approving, "but if the system thinks they're authorized, you'll still lose." Eli tossed her a second wrist display, one he'd configured for her access. "That's why I rebuilt the verification tree." Nia's eyes narrowed as she scanned it. "You're running a local trust anchor." "I'm running my own reality," Eli answered. "Since theirs is flexible." Nia stood and looked out toward the lake. The water glowed orange beneath the lowering sun. Beyond it, Vista Meridian's shoreline homes shimmered, their glass catching light like eyes. "They're not just being annoying," Nia said. "They're chasing something." Eli turned toward her. "What?" Nia sighed. "I pulled a municipal audit thread." Quietly, Vista Meridian applied for a contract, Regional Evacuation Corridor Certification, disaster funding, federal money, long-term infrastructure control. Eli felt his stomach sink. A corridor through my ranch would give them a direct connector to the reservoir and the turbine access road, Nia finished. "It's not about your fence. It's about leverage, property values, political weight. They want your land to become their artery." Eli clenched his jaw so hard his teeth ached. "So they're making me the villain to justify taking it." "Exactly," Nia said. "A narrative that fits on a screen. Rancher blocks emergency access. It's clean. It's emotional. And it's profitable." Eli looked at the dirt road, imagining it widened, paved, lit at night, his pasture carved into lanes and signage. His cattle pushed behind barriers like exhibits. He swallowed the anger before it could spill out. "Can you prove the node injection?" he asked. Nia hesitated. "I can't touch their private servers. But I can show anomalies, authentication requests routed through their HOA node in patterns that look engineered." "That might not be enough," Eli said. "It's enough if we make the county uncomfortable," Nia replied. "People get brave when evidence is loud." A vehicle approached in the distance, the dust plume visible long before the shape of it emerged. Eli's pulse jumped, but when it came closer, he recognized the county cruiser. Deputy Marisol Kane rolled up slowly, parked by the gate, and stepped out with her arms folded. She took one look at the fresh dirt work, the hidden hardware, the neatly restored fence rail. "You really don't know how to relax," she said. Eli gave her a tired smile. "I relax when people stop trying to steal my road." Kane walked closer, boots crunching gravel. "I got another complaint," she said. "They're calling your spike barrier a public hazard." "It's behind my gate," Eli replied. "On my side." "Candy doesn't care about geography," Kane said. "She cares about optics." She lowered her voice. "And she's pushing hard. Someone from the contract office called my supervisor asking why enforcement hasn't compelled access." Eli stared at her. "You're being pressured too." Kane's expression tightened. "HOAs have lawyers. I have a badge and an inbox." Nia stepped forward. "If they keep claiming emergency passage, can they force it?" Kane looked at Nia, then back at Eli. "They can try. Civis flags emergency corridor disputes with priority. If their tag validates, I have to treat it as legitimate until arbitration resolves it." Eli's throat felt dry. "And if someone barrels through again?" Kane exhaled. "Then I need to be called before you do anything that looks like retaliation." Eli nodded once. "You'll get called." Kane's gaze shifted toward the road where the bollards were buried. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. She'd seen enough cases to recognize when a man built something because words had failed him. "Just remember," Kane said, voice steady, "if someone gets hurt, the facts won't matter at first. The story will." Eli watched her drive away, her cruiser shrinking into the golden haze. When he turned back, Nia was still staring at Vista Meridian's distant rooftops. "They're going to test you," she said. "I know," Eli replied. The next morning, the test arrived wrapped in legitimacy. Gatekeep chimed sharply at 6:12 a.m., the kind of alert it only used for high-risk events. Eli rolled out of bed, grabbed his jacket, and stepped onto the porch barefoot, coffee forgotten. His wrist display lit up with a warning banner. "Incoming authorized override. Tag type: Emergency utility access. Source node: County Civis. Status: Verified, temporary." Eli stared at it, heart hammering. Verified. County signed. Not spoofed, not glitched, at least not in the way he could immediately prove. A dust plume appeared on the road, moving fast. One vehicle became two. Then three. All red SUVs, glossy and identical, like a manufactured opinion. The lead one had a small emergency light strip on the dash, blinking weakly as if it had learned theatrics from watching police dramas. Eli stepped closer to the gate, boots now on, hands clenched. The spike barrier stood where he'd built it, reflective tips catching morning light. The convoy didn't slow. His screen flashed again. Trajectory. Aggressive. Speed. 41 miles per hour. Intent. Force entry probable. Eli's fingers hovered over the bollard control. If he raised them now and the tag truly was valid, he'd be the one violating procedure. If he didn't, the convoy would set a precedent. They'd claim authorized access had been established, and the ranch would become a hallway in someone else's mansion. He heard Kane's warning in his head. The story will. Eli looked at Nia, who'd come outside quietly and stood beside him like a witness to history. That tag, Eli said, voice tight, they got it through. Nia's eyes sharpened. Temporary override means they pushed the right buttons fast. Civis can be bullied if someone claims evacuation readiness. Eli watched the lead SUV close the distance, dust trailing behind it like a comet tail. In the driver's seat, he could just make out a silhouette. Confident. Upright. Unafraid. He inhaled once, slow and controlled, like he was lining up a difficult shot. Then he pressed the command. Not up. Not yet. He switched the system to challenge mode, forcing a second verification handshake, something Civis couldn't skip without leaving fingerprints. The screen pulsed. Secondary audit request sent. Awaiting response. The SUV barreled closer. And in that narrowing stretch of road, Eli understood the truth of the coming moment. This wasn't about a gate. It was about whether a man who worked the land still had the right to say no, even in the age of machines that could be convinced otherwise. The convoy didn't slow for reason. It slowed only when physics forced the conversation. Eli watched the lead SUV eat up the road in a straight line, dust boiling behind it like a wake. The weak dash light blinked with performative urgency, an imitation siren meant for people who feared paperwork more than fences. His wrist display pulsed in his palm. Awaiting secondary outage. Nia stood beside him, perfectly still, the way people get when they're trying not to disturb a disaster. Eli, she said quietly, if they don't answer. Then it's not real, he replied, voice thin as wire. The SUV was close enough now that Eli could see the driver's face through the windshield. Candice Wexler. Sunglasses gone. Both hands on the wheel. Mouth set in a confident line, like she'd already won and was simply arriving to collect her prize. Behind her, 2 more red SUVs followed. Tight spacing, coordinated movement. Not a mistake. A plan. Eli's system chimed again. Secondary outage. Denied. Reason. Unverifiable emergency parameters. Nia exhaled sharply. There. Eli didn't feel relief. He felt clarity. He raised his thumb over the control interface and spoke to the gate MIC, knowing every camera was watching, every sensor awake. This is private property, he said, calm and audible. Unauthorized entry will be physically prevented. Stop your vehicle. Candice didn't brake. She accelerated. Eli pressed deploy. Beneath the road, steel moved with the blunt certainty of machinery that didn't care about entitlement. The bollards surged upward, 3 thick cylinders punching through gravel with a deep, metallic thunk that vibrated up Eli's legs. Candice slammed the brakes. The SUV's front dipped, tires shrieking. Rubber smoke curled off the treads as the vehicle fought its own momentum. The hood shook violently, and the bumper kissed steel with a harsh crack that sounded like a snapped tool handle. The SUV stopped inches from the raised bollards, but the damage was already done. Coolant hissed, a thin grey plume began to rise, and the front grille sagged slightly like a broken jaw. The second SUV swerved, skidding into the ditch with a spray of dirt. The third stopped hard, its driver throwing up both hands inside the cabin like someone trapped in an argument with gravity. For 3 seconds, everything held, dust hanging in the air, turbines turning in the distance, Eli's heart beat loud enough to feel. Then Candice stepped out of her SUV. She didn't stumble. She didn't look shaken. She stepped onto the road with the grace of someone who believed consequences were for other people. She stared at the steel cylinders like they'd personally offended her. "What," she said, voice carrying, "is wrong with you?" Eli didn't approach. He stayed near the gate where the camera tower could see his face clearly. "What's wrong with me," he replied, "is I'm tired of you pretending my land is your shortcut." Candace pointed at the smoking hood. "You installed weapons." "They're barriers," Eli said. "And you ignored a direct stop warning." Candace turned slightly, addressing her convoy like an audience. "This man just attempted to harm residents during an emergency access operation." Nia stepped forward before Eli could speak. "There was no verified emergency," she said. Her tone was sharp, technical, honest. "Your override failed secondary authentication." Candace's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "A person who understands the system," Nia replied. "Which is why I know you're lying." Candace laughed once, a sound too practiced to be real. "You can't deny what's already documented. Civis signed our corridor status." Eli lifted his wrist display and projected the denial across the gate screen so the cameras captured it in full. "Civis denied your emergency parameters," he said. "On record." Candace's expression flickered, the smallest crack in her composure, quickly patched. "You tampered with the authentication chain," she snapped. Eli's reply came without heat. "You did. That's why my cameras went blind for 11 minutes. Candace stiffened. "That is a ridiculous accusation." The air changed with the arrival of county sirens. Deputy Marisol Kane's cruiser rolled up fast, followed by a second unit. Kane stepped out, scanning the scene with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen people wreck their lives over pride. She stopped beside Eli, gaze bouncing between the Bollards, the smoking SUV, and Candace standing like a queen beside her wounded carriage. "What happened?" Kane asked. Candace spoke first. "Deputy, he installed concealed steel obstacles on what is a public corridor. This was an authorized emergency access run, and he endangered residents." Kane didn't respond immediately. She looked at Eli. "Your version?" Eli kept his tone steady. "They approached at speed. I issued a stop warning. The emergency tag failed secondary verification. I deployed barriers that were designed to prevent entry, not cause injury." Kane's eyes shifted to Nia. "And you?" Nia lifted her display. "I can show the denial log and the spoof anomalies that led to this escalation." Candace scoffed. "Spoof anomalies," she repeated, dripping contempt. "Listen to yourselves." Kane held up a hand. "Enough. Everyone stays here. No one touches the vehicles. I'm calling this in as an incident tied to an arbitration dispute." Candace's lips pressed tight. "This will destroy him," she warned. "We'll make sure of it." Kane stared at her. Threatening people while I'm standing here is a bold strategy." Candace's face smoothed again. "It's not a threat. It's procedure." Hours later, the county arbitration hearing wasn't held in a courtroom. It happened in a modular conference space inside the municipal building. Glass walls, sterile lighting, a holographic emblem of Civis rotating in the center like a cold sun. Candace sat at one side of the table, flanked by her security contractor and a legal representative wearing a suit so sharp it looked printed. Eli sat opposite with Nia and Kane as a witness. Above them, Civis spoke in a neutral voice, neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. "Dispute review initiated," the AI announced. "Present evidence." Candace's lawyer stood first. "Vista Meridian Estates has documented historic access through Corridor 7B, he said smoothly. The respondent erected hazardous obstructions and interfered with emergency readiness operations. Candace nodded slowly, the picture of controlled outrage. Then Eli stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He simply made the truth heavy enough to land. "My gate logged repeated unauthorized entry attempts," he said. "The HOA submitted altered validation tokens and attempted to force access using unverified emergency parameters. My cameras were disrupted for 11 minutes in a targeted blackout." Candace's lawyer smiled thinly. Conjecture. Nia stepped in without waiting for permission. Not conjecture, she said. Sensor fusion. She projected a timeline, vibration strips, drone telemetry, system timestamps, and the precise moment the cameras went blind while all other sensors continued uninterrupted. Civis processed silently for 2 seconds, then spoke. Anomaly detected. Video signal interruption inconsistent with power or weather events. Candace's composure tightened. Your AI is flawed, she said, irritation leaking through. Perhaps, Kane replied, leaning forward, but your story is falling apart. Candace's lawyer attempted to pivot. Even if anomalies exist, the corridor designation. Nia cut him off. Was injected through a private HOA node that should not have authority to certify public passage. Civis answered immediately. Node routing review. Complete. Private node influence identified. Reviewing source. Candace's throat bobbed once. That's impossible. And then the final nail arrived from a place no one expected. A wind turbine service drone log file surfaced on Nia's screen. Audio captured during routine maintenance flights near the shoreline. Not meant for court. Not meant for anyone. But stored anyway. Candace's voice played through the speakers, clear as day. Force the gate. If he blocks you, good. We need an incident. We need him on record. Silence swallowed the room. Candace's face drained of color so quickly it looked unreal, like someone turned down a saturation slider. Kane exhaled. Jesus. Civis spoke with the calm of a machine that had no pleasure in victory, only correction. Fraud indicators confirmed. Dispute resolution. Corridor claim denied. Access rights remain private. Recommending investigation. False reporting, unauthorized node injection, intentional escalation. Candace stood so abruptly her chair scraped. This is outrageous. You can't. Her lawyer reached for her arm, but she shook him off, eyes locked on Eli with pure, naked hatred. Eli met her stare without flinching. You were never trying to pass through, he said quietly. You were trying to own what wasn't yours. Candace's mouth opened, but no words came. Not because she had none, because for the first time, they wouldn't matter. Outside, evening settled over Red Butte Reservoir. The sky deepened to a clean blue, turbines turning slow and steady. Eli stood by his gate as the last of the county vehicles rolled away. The bollards lowered back beneath the dirt until the road looked ordinary again. Nia walked beside him, hands in her pockets. You know they'll hate you forever, she said. Eli watched his cattle drift toward the waterline, calm now, unbothered by legal fiction. Let them, he replied. My gate doesn't care about hate. It cares about permission.